Welcome to Flute Q&A number 40. We've got a great question today from Mark. He says, oh, and then I have a funny comment that someone wrote in the Q&A, the questions. Someone wrote a comment and it made me laugh. So firstly, Mark wrote, how do I improve my upper register? I'm struggling with high E and it's breathy, unclear notes and occasional squeaks. Also, I loved your 3-day embouchure course. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to answer your question, Mark. And I'm also going to put my flute together. Not a great multitasker, so I'm going to focus on doing this. And then I'm going to read you the comment from Dan. Dan left a comment. And at first I saw it and went, oh, I think I've offended someone. And then I realized he was joking. Dan says, I'll just move this microphone towards me. Dan says, oh, a bit of preamble. I recorded a flute Q&A and I mentioned that a jackhammer had just started up across the road. So Dan wrote, it seems as if you have a bad attitude. That wasn't a pesky jackhammer in the background. That was a modern flute and jackhammer duet. So that made me laugh. Thanks, Dan. All right. So mark your question about your high register, your high octave, and your breathy, unclear, and squeaky notes. Yes, I have some answers for you. All right. So it goes like this. All right. Let's demonstrate. Hang on. Multitasking. Let's demonstrate what Mark is talking about. So high E that he's talking about, I can only imagine that's the high E because it's a notoriously difficult note on the flute. Notoriously difficult, that is, unless you have something on your flute called a split E mechanism, which is a bit of a fandangled little extra thing that you get when you purchasing your flute new. It's built into the flute. You can tell you have a split E mechanism by, you can see here, that little rod there, that little thing there, that tells you that you have a split E on your flute. And it makes high E's easier. Unfortunately, it then makes high F sharps feel harder. By comparison, they're harder to your now easy high E's. Split E mechanisms are wonderful. I love them because it's just a bit more stability on that high E. But you definitely don't need one. Now, if you don't have one, don't go out and buy a new flute. Because if you learn about using proper technique to get your high notes, improve your embouchure, then improve your high notes in that order, you will find that you can play a flute without a split E. Just as if you have good technique, you can play a flute without a split E mechanism as easily as you can play a flute with a split E mechanism, because even though it makes your even though the split E mechanism makes your high E easier, there's still plenty of other notes on the flute, like the high F sharp, that are still difficult to play. So you've still got to be good at that technique, high note technique. Anyway, the reason I'm doing this, every time I say high note technique, I'll elaborate in a second. Okay, Mark, you said you're struggling with high E. Okay, we've covered that, sort of. Breathy, unclear notes, and occasional squeaks. Okay, so breathy, it's probably because the hole in your mouth is too big. That tends to make breathy notes like this. Is a good size hole, is too big. Now don't worry that you can't see my mouth in detail, but you can hear the breathiness. So good size hole, so small, and big size, big hole. You also run out of air, so that can cause breathy notes. Unclear notes, which I know is like a variation on breathy notes. So unclear can be, let's say, like that, sort of like a thin sound rather than breathy sounding. And you heard there was some squeaks in there too. The main reason for unclear notes like that is tension, but it can also be a big embouchure hole, too big an embouchure hole as well, if it has that breathy sound to your unclearness. Now, the squeaks that you mentioned, and you heard it in that example there, like this. If you go too high and you don't want to, is tension. There's no other way you can squeak like that without being too tight in your embouchure. So, Mark, it's great that you liked the 3-day embouchure course. It's free, by the way. Anyone watching this who would like to do it, go to www.flute.school and you can sign up for the free course there. So Mark, that's excellent. It sounds like it's gotten you on the right track, which is good. The next step after that is the Flute Academy. The Flute Academy is the program that I run. The first module is embouchure. It's the 3-day free flute embouchure course is it's called How to Instantly Improve Your Flute Tone in 3 days. It's like an intro into the first module in the Flute Academy. It works on fixing your embouchure completely. And now, deliberately in this order, the second module is high notes, and it teaches you that specific high note technique, the one I was doing this for. It's because it involves a tiny movement of the corners of your mouth, pushing forward rather than pulling back. It's something that a lot of amateur flute players don't realize. They think they need to squeeze for high notes, but actually the opposite is true. They need to unsqueeze and use their embouchure in a particular way to make the high notes come out, but you have to fix your embouchure first, which is why the embouchure module is first and the high note module is second. Now there's 9 modules. It's called the 45-day flute transformation. It's a course within the academy. 9 modules includes things like faster fingers, breathing. So the first 2 are particularly relevant for everybody because it's the absolute foundations of getting a good tone and then easy high notes. So you can go check that. I'll put a link below for the Flute Academy if you'd like to look at it. Now, the other thing that might help you, Mark, is I'm going to put a link to a video for you called The 4 Reasons Why Your Tone is Fluffy. Now, I would suggest you go and watch it. To give you a little brief overview, the 4 reasons are break. What did I write? Didn't understand my own handwriting there. One reason is if you've had a break from flute playing, you can be fluffy when you come back. I don't think that's your case. Number 2 is tension, definitely your case because you're squeaking. Number 3 is if you've eaten something that makes your mouth dry or kind of squeezy in weird food ways, like lemons. I find that does that to me, sometimes dairy. I don't think that's your issue either. And then the 4th reason is your flute embouchure being too big, the hole being too big, which I do think is your embouchure, which you would have discovered in the free flute embouchure, the free course. The 3-day embouchure course. So you will have discovered that as well in that. Go watch this video on the 4 reasons why your tone is fluffy, and I think it will shed some more light on this for you. Guess what? My name is Jane Cavanagh. I didn't say that at the start. My name is Jane. I'm a flute teacher. It's been great to have you in this flute Q&A, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.